And there you go. We can see your screen, Jacqueline. You're all set.
Okay. I would also like to thank Aphasia Access for doing such a great job, not only today for 24 hours, but all the work they've invested in working for persons with aphasia. When Todd and Liz asked me if I would present something, I thought to myself, well, what can I do? I've been retired for a couple of years, but I thought then, okay, I'll present what's been happening here in Vienna over the past 48 years. And so my title for today is Potpourri from Vienna, Aphasia and Aging. And I'll be talking about our Aphasia Club. I'm representing the International Federation on Aging in the UN in Vienna. I'm the chair of the NGO Committee on Aging in the UN in Vienna. And I'll talk a little about the new developments beyond the Ella photo series that I'm working on developing a computer program. But before that, for 43 years, I was doing research on aphasia at the Academy of Sciences in Vienna in Austria. I'll give you the take-home message now, please stop me when I should stop talking, because I never keep track of time. The take-home message from this is that I really feel that self-help groups are so important today, especially for the chronic persons, the persons with chronic aphasia who have, in our group, have been involved for 20 or more years. I also think that sharing history is so important from the older generation to the younger colleagues entering the field, to give them a sense of history about the publications that are out there that go back to the 1800s that maybe many people don't read today. But in many cases, we are reinventing the wheel because some of these thoughts were out there many, many years ago. And I think it's so important to know about them. And I think also sharing the history about our colleagues, older colleagues. I'm thinking of Audrey Holland, Nancy Helm Esterbrooks, Leonard Lapointe, and Harold Goodglass, all of these colleagues, to know much more about them, how they were involved and what they did for our field. It's necessary for the younger people to learn that. And I think aging has become a really important topic for me. Aging issues are related to aphasia. A lot of persons with aphasia are older, but there are also very many young persons with aphasia. And the link here is the communication, isolation, participation, and many other aspects, but I'll get to that later on. But now a little history. In the last presentation, or not the last one, the one before that, the film, someone said how they came to the field. I was really lucky that when I came to Vienna in 1972 to start my PhD work in linguistics, I heard a lecture by Dr. Carl Gloning on aphasia. And listening to that lecture in my first semester of PhD studies, I was so overwhelmed by what he said that after the talk, I went up to him and I said, could I go with you to the clinic to learn more about aphasia? And that's how I started learning about aphasia. And after 1.5 years, then I was offered a position at the Academy of Sciences, and I worked with him till his death. But I was so grateful that I was able to hear him and know exactly what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, actually. And I'll just put on a few things here that also with history, there was a Wernicke Centennial in Bonn, Germany, where Dr. Gloning was having lunch with Norman Geschwind, and I was invited to have lunch with him. And I can just feel it even now today that I was so nervous that I couldn't even bring the spoon to my mouth, sitting at the table with these two gentlemen, scientists, everything. And these were just important moments for me. I'll bring a few more. But then working for the Academy of Sciences in Vienna, there were so many clients who were alone and they didn't have anyone to take care of their bureaucratic things at ministries or whatever. And I started the Aphasia Club in 1976, and it's still going on today. And I'll show you some photos from that in a few minutes. And I think something that I think anyone still working in the field of aphasia who's in my age group will remember the Linguistic Summer Institute in 1982 at the College Park, University of Maryland, where I think about 30 or 40 aphasiologists, top researchers, scientists, clinicians, were there for 6 weeks to give talks. David Kaplan, Alfonso Karamazza, Alan Rubens, John Marshall, Mary Louise Kane, Klaus Haitian. I can't even list them all. And one of them was Dr. Alan Rubens. He gave a lecture on aphasia, apraxia, and agnosia. And sitting in that lecture, watching his videos at the time, I became so interested in the topic of verbal perseveration. And then I followed it up and did my thesis on it. And that was just a life-changing experience for me to participate in that summer school. And I don't think they've ever had anything like that since then. Harry Whitaker organized it, excuse me for not mentioning him. He organized the whole Linguistic Institute that summer, and it was fantastic. Then just a little more, knowing the need. When I started working in 1972, there weren't many things out there that you could buy to use for testing and for therapy, picture materials. So I developed the Ella Photo series, which I'm still using to today. And being involved then with our Aphasia Club, we became a member of the Association Internationale Aphasie. And that was then the link to now what I'm doing today, is that by being president of that organization, it's an international organization with its seat in Brussels, I was able to attend meetings at the UN as a guest at the NGO Committee on Aging in the UN. And as a guest, I was there for maybe 10 years until I retired. And then they asked me to represent the International Federation on Aging, which has a seat in Toronto. And I'd just like to mention, tomorrow they have a webinar called the Town Hall on volunteering. So you could look up the International Federation on Aging if you're interested in the topic of volunteering. And even tomorrow night, there's also a workshop from the Pass It On Network on online learning with a guest from Africa presenting it. So these are topics that I think are relevant for us in the aphasia field. And what I'm doing right now is developing a computer program called the Everyday Life Activities Language Modules. So that's a little bit of the history that I wanted to bring. Now, I think Todd wanted me to talk about the Aphasia Club, and Liz also. And we started in 1976, and we're still going strong. And this is one page of our brochure that we send out. All of my work is in German because it's a German population here. But if you look at this picture here, this is a collage of things people who've participated in the Aphasia Club over the year. And if you see the little yellow pictures in the middle that are outdated way back when, the little girl in that picture is my daughter, who's now 45 years old, so you can know how long it is. And the little boy sitting on my lap in the below picture, he's 41, so you can see how long we've had this Aphasia Club. And another picture of what's a collage of things happening and get-togethers. And we get together. We've moved several times because we had to move. And we go on outings together. Here we visited a museum in Krems, a caricature museum, and one of the clients lives there, so he showed us around the town. Then we take part in different events sponsored by the City of Vienna government. And as a self-help group, we're very lucky that we do get a little subsidy every year to keep us going for office work, for the telephone and things like that. So we are very lucky. And when I retired, I had to leave my office and leave everything behind. But then as one door closes, another door opens, that we were offered an office in the Martha Fruviat Self-Help Center. And that's where we hold our meetings as of 2017. So we have an office there, and we work there. And this was a meeting we had in COVID times, 2 days ago, where we meet and with face masks, physical distancing, but the clients really wanted to get together again after being separated for so long. And it was important for them to talk about their experiences during the COVID times. And so we decided they wanted to, that's why we had it. And those who were still afraid to attend didn't attend. But the people sitting closer to each other live in the same household, and that's why they're closer together. But we did practice physical distancing. And here on this day, we did talk about how they experienced COVID in the past months, and yeah, what they've learned during this time, and what their needs are. So it was very important to get together. So I mentioned also that when I started out, there were very few materials, and I decided to develop my own materials, because at the time, if you wanted to do a comprehension task, we had to cut out pictures from catalogs, clothing or whatever catalogs that were available, and the photos weren't homogeneous. So I decided to do that, and that was the Everyday Life Activities photo series, which we're still using today. Even in the group, we pass around cards and do language games or tasks during the club meetings, because one of the clients always says, after we have our coffee and discuss what's going on in their lives, they say, please, the cards, and then they want to do something together. So this is what it looks like, the photo series. And yeah, we've been using it also for research. And when the first set of cards was finished, I applied for a project to work on how the materials could be used. And at that time, we then started working with clients who had recently suffered a stroke. We then used them with chronic clients. And these were the basic tenets that we proposed at the time. And there's a lot of overlap with the principles of neuroplasticity: delay, own production, a lot of repetition. And in the protocols that we developed for this project, there was a great emphasis on memory, and that seemed to be really, really, really important. And if you look at the principles of experience-dependent neuroplasticity, there is a great overlap to what we had started, even the 1990s, and this came out in 2008. So I think we were on the right track doing it. And this is what it looked like when we offered a protocol to a client. We had, since we were in a research setting, I know people have said it over and over again to me, it's not realistic in a clinic that you can do a lot of testing, but we're in a research unit, so 10 hours was even little for the amount of testing we did pre-therapy. And then they received 60 therapy sessions. Initially it was 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, and then it went down to 4 times a week, and then we ended up with 3 times a week, 1 hour to 2 hour sessions. And then after the 60 sessions, we had post-therapy testing using the same language tasks. And the structure of each therapy session was the same for all of the 60 therapy sessions. And what we worked on were the photo cards that I just showed on one of the slides. And we had different therapy protocols, but we did start out with the Lsyntax program, in which we asked, what did we work on? And after we had conversation for a few minutes, we said, well, what did we work on in the last session? And then we went through the materials from the last session. Then we worked on new cards, building up utterances, and then taking them apart like a mapping therapy. And then after doing that, took the most time of the session. Then we had a comprehension check. And then we worked on new cards a second time. And then at the end, all the cards were gone. And we said, well, what did we work on today? And the amazing thing was, even with severely impaired clients, that this step was really, really, really good. they provided the best performance, actually. The learning during the whole session, of course, but thinking that after working on materials for almost an hour, it varied from 45 minutes to an hour, that this was the best performance for them. And they were really happy about it. So they left the session with a good feeling. And we usually only worked on oral language production, sentence production in this task. The homework was that they would go home and dictate the sentences to a caregiver or a relative, or even if they had a writing impairment, just to even write down words or draw what they remembered from the session. And then they brought the homework with them to the next session. What we wanted to see here was the generalization from oral language production to sentence production. And we observed it in very many clients. And Tim is the one I've presented in Australia and at the Academy of Aphasia and also at the CAC, this just shows the long-term work that we did. The main research framework for us was to look at the long-term recovery of language skills. And we were able to work with clients up to sometimes 10 years to document how their language skills were regained over time, also providing intensive language therapy to them. And here you see from 0 on Boston naming test was a little bit better, action naming test, the Boston experimental version, and then a sentence production task, how he improved over time. And the one dip in performance that you see here was due to verbal perseveration, that he perseverated prepositions that had been worked on in 2 protocols before that, but now they were more or less activated, and it just shows the dynamics of language recovery, that it doesn't just happen all at once or in just a straight line upwards, but you do have changes and interactions among the different aspects of what you're working on. Now, my main job is to develop a computer program it's in German. It's being developed in German right now. And one of the programs is the Ella language modules for enhancing language skills. And I'll just show a few slides from that. There are tasks on the word level, sentence level, text level, dialogue training, and cognitive level. Here you see we have it divided into production tasks and comprehension tasks, Verständnis, and all of the tasks are listed here. We have an auditory presentation and a visual presentation, but we also have auditory plus visual and visual plus auditory. And the tasks are broken down into easy examples, middle, and more difficult ones. And this would be from, this is really a really exciting task. I've never seen it in any program. It's matching sentences to a pictured story that's presented in the correct order. So you see a picture and then you have to pick out the sentence that matches that in the story. And then at the end, you can hear the whole story, read the whole story, and you can repeat it as often as you like. And this is the severe level, the most difficult level. It starts out with 3 pictures and then it goes up to 4 and 5 pictures. And this would be for the less impaired clients. Then we also have a lot of dialogues. We have over 20 categories of everyday life activities, hobbies, health, all of these areas. And we have dialogues that have 1 turn taking, 1.5 turn takings, and then 2 turn takings. And again, the auditory and the visual presentation. And this just shows you one of the dialogues here, where at the end you can hear the whole dialogue and you see the people who are talking, who are speaking in the dialogue. And this is a way of practicing dialogues on all aspects of everyday life. Okay. Now I'm turning to where I've now become active is in aging. So I think everything that I said before about language and language therapy, what we need for persons with aphasia, but I think there's been little thought about our generations that they're living 20, 30 years after retirement, and some of the people are living alone, and the isolation is really, loneliness, isolation is really detrimental to quality of life just in general. So I think not only do we have to enhance language skills in persons with a language impairment, we also have to think about enhancing language skills in older persons. If you don't use it, you lose it. And if you use it, you improve it. But you have to have the possibility to do that. And I think that's where we have to do a lot more work in aging. And that's what I would like to, as soon as I finish the computer programs, not only for our clients in the self-help group, but I'd like to start a project on enhancing language skills in older persons. And this is necessary due to the demographic changes that we're seeing. Longevity is really an issue for the future. To work against cognitive decline, I think we really have to have an input, just as we say, dosage is important for persons with aphasia, but I think it's also important here for older persons. And the statistics show that the increase in dementing illnesses is phenomenal in the next 2 decades. By 2050, I don't even have the data to tell you how many persons will be suffering from a dementing illness, but it's really increasing. So the aging was important for me, or has become important for me, and I've been attending the meetings in the United Nations in Vienna, and there's an NGO committee on aging in New York, and they're very, very active, and there's an NGO committee in Geneva where the World Health Organization is seated, and all of these 3 aging committees try to collaborate, and every year on the 1st of October is International Day of Older Persons. So at least for that day, we plan an event in all 3 sites. And what we're working on is trying to change the image of older persons in society, the benefits, the grandmothers working with children, the babysitting, the learning that they provide, and just the support for young families. A lot of people couldn't work if they didn't have a grandmother or a grandfather to take care of their children for them. And in many societies, that is the rule. So we're trying to work to make the image of older persons more positive, especially now in the COVID times. We've seen that the older persons have been blamed or have been seen negatively because they're older, and the comorbidities by the time you age. So we have to really work against that. Ageism is really a negative thing in our society. And I can say that the International Federation on Aging, with its seat in Canada, and Dr. Jane Barrett is the General Secretary there, they're really doing a lot of work now. Wait, what was this?
Só levanta sua perna de cara.
What was that?
What the?
What was that?
No idea. Let's.
Okay, I'm almost finished now. So, okay.
I am so sorry, Jacqueline.
No, that's okay. That's not mine. Please don't.
I
don't know where that came from.
Somebody that just came in. So, anyways.
Okay. So, but I'd really like to end is that with this with the aging is that I think it's really important that we work on human rights, not only for persons with aphasia. We have to think of them also with their difficulties communicating, but also for older persons. And the Sustainable Development Goals from the United Nations, one of them is quality education and lifelong learning. that fits in also with aphasia. Actually, for any chronic person with aphasia, that they, am I there? Oh, I'm gone.
No, we see you. I see
Oh, I'm
it.
there. Okay,
Yeah,
good. I'm sorry. Okay, then I'll go to the
good.
last one, I think. That will.
I just booted the person that had come in last out.
Okay, good. No, so I just want to say that I think that it would be interesting for us working in the field of aphasia to become more acquainted with aging issues. And the NGO Committee on Aging at the United Nations in Vienna is my base for the moment. And there are international organizations. They have to be accredited organizations to be a member. So we have about 33 organizations: International Association of Gerontology, the Association of Universities of the Third Age. There are many of them, but I think it's important that this work is shared also, and the awareness of the issues is important for us, okay? So I said at the beginning my take-home message, and I think it remains the same, that we have to do a lot more. We're doing as much as we can, but there's still a lot to be done. And I thank Aphasia Access for what they're doing for around the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline. And thank you for everything that you've done. So you should be very proud of yourself and all the accomplishments that you've made and everything that you've given to aphasia. So we're going to open it up. If anybody has any questions, let's take a look in the chat.
Wait, how do I get back to you now?
Back to me?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm here.
There we go. So we've got a question here. It says, agree very much that aging and mild cognitive impairment is very interesting to me. Also, how over time, some persons with aphasia may develop added cognitive issues and impairments with no new strokes.
Yeah, I've really only seen it maybe with 3 clients that from a very severe aphasia, they recovered, but then at a certain point, the curve went down again when they started, we started seeing cognitive decline. And then in those 2 or 3 cases, it turned into a dementia. But I can really think of only two clients that I've had over the years. And I've also primary progressive aphasia. Yeah, I've had one of Jakob Creutzfeldt where I was able to study her language decline. But yeah, I think it's true. You have to think that many of the persons with aphasia are living so much longer after their initial stroke that it's maybe a normal aging process kicks in at a certain point that it would have kicked in anyway, even if they didn't have the aphasia.